Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here with Mike Gallagher to walk you through this 9-game Monday slate. We are back to the holiday schedules, which means really big slates this week in anticipation of some small ones this weekend. No games on Saturday and Sunday,
Friday.
Christmas Day is the normal, 5 games staggered throughout the course of the day. So what that means is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, really big slates this week. We will be here to break it down for you each and every day of the week, 2:00 Eastern. As always, Mike, how are you on this fine Monday?
Doing good. Looks like I'm gonna probably get 3 underdog teams through, so excited for
Nice.
that. Big season long night for me. I'm gonna be fading some Aaron Jones and Alan Lazard to try to get into my semifinals for my main league. But good football weekend. A lot of injury stuff to talk about today. Got some possible returns that look kind of shady, so excited to dig in.
Yeah, good luck to you and all those out there in fantasy football streets. I have had like the most tilting last 3 weeks of
Not again.
DFS season long best ball sports betting that I think I've ever had in a period, to the point that I actually, like, I do not get very emotional about things. I got fired up angry yesterday
Ugh.
when I was tilting like all day long, and I usually don't, but
Mhm.
I have like big futures on the Titans to win the division. I started the year with big futures to win, with the Jags to win the division.
Mhm.
Then, like 3 weeks ago, Leone and I went big on the Titans to win the division. And watching the Jags now like reel off all of these comebacks in
Oh
a
man.
row, and then Tannehill gets hurt. Tannehill ends up coming back, so that wasn't that bad. But then I come
Mhm.
back in to my office after getting a snack, and Dre has gone 3 for 3 in three
Oh.
minutes from three, and I'm just losing it. We lost a 10K league because
Ugh.
Jonathan Taylor got hurt. Um, and we didn't get the buy in that league because we blocked an opponent who had Lamar Jackson by adding Tyler Huntley via waivers. The opponent then added Brock Purdy, and Purdy
Mhm.
outscored Huntley by 17. So like all these things in a row, our SGA cards selling for like 20K less than we expected. Like, I've just been on life tilt of late, but I am feeling physically better, so that's good at least.
That's good.
Um, yeah, losing solo showdown on a Cedric Wilson catch late in the game,
Ugh.
I can reel them all off. Just bad beat stories left and right. And then today we were ready to fire some props on OKC, and Shea gets ruled in, and I'm just like,
Ugh.
okay, this is enough.
Yeah, enough.
All right. All that said, let's get into today's slates. Let's start with the questionable tags. Let's start with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who was moved from out to questionable. Josh Giddey is still listed out. They
Mhm.
have a number of G League players also listed out that we think there's a chance that some of those guys are available tonight. It's a home game against Portland. We saw them last game without Shea and Giddey. We've seen them a little bit without Giddey. He's missed 3 other games this year, so we know what that looks like a little bit. But what are your expectations for if Shea is available and what the Thunder look like tonight?
I think he's playing for sure, and yeah, I was because it was not surprising he missed the game over the weekend. It was a back to back. I think that was why because he didn't really see him get hurt. And I was thinking, and you mentioned this too, that I think that they're going to do this midday Q thing, and that's what they did. They do it all the time. We talked about this before. This is basically a probable tag to us, so we're expecting him to be in. Giddy with illness, likely to be out. So yeah, against Portland, they might go big again. So that would mean a starting lineup of SGA, Dort, Jalen Williams, Pokashevsky, and then I think they start Eugene Omiguri again. He was pretty solid. The Nurk thing could swing this as well, with Nurk
Yeah.
being questionable on the other side, so that could also be a factor. But if he's out, I think that would be more likely to go smaller. And should also note that Trey Mann got sent to the G League. Doesn't sound like he's going to be coming back. It was pretty surprising.
He did not play
Myself,
much.
yeah, he didn't play much, didn't start.
Yep.
He's usually the starter every time Giddey and SGA miss. We saw him have a pretty big usage down the stretch last year, and I was real. And Justin Fan and I were both really surprised that he didn't start as they went with Isaiah Joe. But yeah, it was Jalen Williams led the team in ball handling, led the team in potential assists as well. So he'll lose ball handling obviously with SGA back, but yeah, that mostly covers it. Dort also not an injury report, got dinged up over the weekend too, but should be good to go.
Yeah. On the other side of that game, you mentioned some of the lineup stuff could be impacted by who's available for Portland. They've got both
Mhm.
Yusuf Nurkic and Jeremy Grant listed as questionable. Grant with back spasms, Yusuf Nurkic with right calf soreness. What are your expectations there?
Yeah, midday downgrade for Nurk for a calf muscle. That's usually a pretty bad sign. So we would probably see Drew Eubanks get the start there. A plus matchup against this OKC front court, regardless of who's out there. So he would be certainly a good punt play. A little bit of a later start there, 8 o'clock. Grant, pretty straightforward. We've seen Justice Winslow pick up essentially his minutes without the high upside. They play Grant quite a bit. And then more usage for Anthony Simons, Dame Lillard, but it sounds like Grant has a little bit of a better shot. And like I said, the midday Q tags getting downgraded is really troubling.
Yeah, I think a notable thing, you have that box score pulled up with Portland, Houston. They were really in control in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And they were basically playing an 8-man rotation. They used Keon Johnson for a little bit of a rest at the end of the first half, but only like 3 minutes, basically. Otherwise, it was an 8-man rotation. And then the game got out of hand. And they let Keon Johnson roll a lot. I think he played almost the entire fourth quarter. And they also allowed Greg Brown and Jabari Walker to get in there as well. But the point being is that this is a team that, when they're without their main guys, is very willing to play super, super tight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that game was competitive, I think it would have been an 8-man rotation with like 6-7 spillover minutes from Keon Johnson, maybe up to 10 spillover minutes as a ninth man. So like really, really tight on the high end side. Obviously, there's more usage competition with Dame around, and the prices have been up a little bit, but the matchup with OKC would be pretty good. So this is definitely a spot to pay attention to from a DFS perspective. Okay, other
Definitely.
questionables on the injury report. Korkmaz is questionable for Philly. I'm not sure he's in the rotation if
Yeah.
he is available, so I think we can skip over that real quickly.
Yep.
OJ Anunoby was listed questionable today. That was surprising to me from
Mm-hmm.
Toronto's side. Gary Trent Jr. also listed questionable. I would have to say, I mean, Toronto might be the team after Oklahoma City that is the most frustrating for me to try to figure out projections on a night to night basis with their minutes. And I got stuck yesterday as well with some hesitation on pulling some triggers on some prop stuff that ended up would have been really good, and it was really
Mm-hmm.
frustrating that I had the hesitation. But like, I just don't have a strong level of confidence. They're on a back to back. OG and
Mm-hmm.
Trent questionable. What are your thoughts on their availability tonight?
Yeah, so going back to last week on December the 13th, the Pelicans had announced he's going to miss, quote, at least a week. That means he shouldn't play today. So I have my doubts on OG playing. Gary Trent, we saw him get added all of a sudden to the injury report out of the blue, rolled him out. Don't have much information there, but I think he's much, much more likely to play than OG Anunoby is. And my God, this team is just dropping the ball here. So I would expect them to probably start the same. Maybe they start Trent over Wancho, but Van Vliet's been playing much, much better. His role's been great. His drives are way up. Ball handling's up. Scoring is much improved. So, I don't think OG would impact those guys too much. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think OG's playing today, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting whipsawed on the Raptors because last year my philosophy on them was take unders, because even though the math said overs for the futures, because I thought they were so short-handed. This year, I thought they improved their bench depth by getting in Otto Porter Jr., by also like drafting Koloko, by developing some of these guys. And now they're getting ravaged with injuries, and they really have struggled with bench depth. Thad Young was another guy that I felt like pretty good about. They're just not getting much, and Scotty Barnes has not taken a step forward, which has been really frustrating. Yesterday, you see Malachi Flynn get up to 37 minutes. The game before, Juancho Hernan-Gomez played 40 minutes. So when they're shorthanded without Trent Jr. and Anunoby, it's going to be very hot hand situation, and the minutes variance is huge on these guys. Do you feel like any of the secondary guys, not Barnes, Van Vliet, Siakam, have really solidified themselves where you feel comfortable each and every night that they're going to be out there for 20 plus minutes?
I think Boucher is probably in mostly good graces. Minutes have been fairly consistent. They're going to need the size here as well. So I think he's kind of safe regardless of who's available.
Okay.
Definitely an option. We know he won't be. He hasn't played post D on Embiid, but they're going to need the size. They're going to want the rebounding out there to help as well. So I think Boucher's in a pretty decent spot.
Okay. Um, Keeping it moving on the questionable tags, DeJounte Murray and John Collins. I believe it was Woj who tweeted that Collins is expected to return tonight. No news on DeJounte Murray, whose questionable tag still lingers. The Hawks are without Clint Capella, so they remain shorthanded, even if they're getting players from the rotation back in. They're still without Capella. They're without Jared Culver, who's on the G League two-way contract. We believe Collins is going to be back in. What are your expectations on DeJounte Murray?
Yeah, I've got my doubts here too. So back on December 8th, the official Hawks report said that he was going to miss, quote, approximately 2 weeks. So he is beating this timetable again, much like OG, even more so than OG. So we saw him do some stuff in practice. I only saw him just getting shots up. Wasn't doing too much, but I mean, who knows what else he was doing besides that 1 minute clip I saw. So I think he's unlikely. He was at shoot around, didn't get much detail. So I think he's going to miss at least one more here. And then they're going to probably start Bogdan, I think. No more minutes limit. We saw his minutes get up there even before the minutes limit drop with their little triumvirate of Nate McMillan, Bogdan, and the trainer who is the biggest yes man ever when it comes to minutes. So yeah, I would expect him to get the start in a kind of a smaller lineup with Hunter playing the 4. Obviously, we got Onyeka Okongwu, just a complete dud.
Don't you think the starting lineup would be Trey at the 1, Bogdan at the 2, Hunter 3, Collins 4, Okongwu 5?
Sorry, yeah. If Collins is out, yeah. So it'd be like that. Yeah. So that would be the way it goes. My bad.
Okay. Cool. And they could start someone like Forrest as like a spot start and bring Bogdan off the bench or something like that. But it would essentially
sounded pretty confident. Yeah, McMillan sounded pretty confident. He wanted to keep him in the starting lineup.
Okay. Cool.
And should add Okongwu is dudding after we saw what Jokic did to the Charlotte front court last night. Like, come on, man, you got to do better.
Yeah, it's been, like I said, it's been a tough year for Okongwu. He's another one of these guys who has not taken a big step forward that you kind of hope at this point in their development that they do. Other questionables on the slate: Keldon Johnson, Romeo Langford, Josh Richardson is out for San Antonio. They've gotten Jakob Poeltl back, although he was on a minutes limit. So there's been like a lot of moving parts around the Spurs. What do you have for us tonight?
Yeah, no shoot around for Keldon, so it sounds like he's going to miss. And we'll see what's up with Romeo. Romeo's injury wasn't very serious, but I think Romeo would probably get the start, and he would pick up a big defensive assignment against those Rockets guards. But yeah, so I'd expect the starting lineup to be Trey, Vassell, Romeo, Jeremy Sohan, and then Poeltl had a minutes limit, and he was not doing much earlier in the week. Got just 21 minutes with a hard cap on him. Was supposed to play 20 tops, gets to 21, so probably has a little bit of a cap there again, coming off that knee contusion. So yeah, those guys would fill in, and a little bit more KBD off the bench. But I expect if Romeo can't go, they'll probably still start. I would think KBD again.
Yeah, he seems to be the guy that's like whoever's out. He's the jack of all trades. Will fill in because they move Sohan around positionally. So, and Sohan, for those of the props bettors, we had an awful Saturday, and one of them was entirely my fault on Sohan because we had 2 bets, a PRA or an RA, being rebounds and assists. Rebounds and assists, the line was like 5.5, something like that. And Gallagher and Dank both wanted the RA. I stuck with the math lords of the PRA, and Sohan goes out there and shoots 1 for 5 from the field and 0 for 2, and we lose the bet by 3 PRA on a bloody Saturday. So you can blame me, prop subs. It was my bad on that one. All right, keeping moving on the injury report. We talked about the Portland side of things. Let's move to the Wolves because they filed just before we came on here. Rudy Gobert questionable. D'Angelo Russell probable, I believe was the tag that they gave D'Angelo Russell. And Naz Reid probable, with Jordan McLaughlin ruled out here. What are your expectations for the Wolves, who scored 150 on the Chicago Bulls without Karl Anthony Towns and without Naz Reid, essentially? I mean, like, that's unbelievable. Sorry, Winky, if you're still watching.
Yeah, earmuffs. The Bulls are so. I mean, you got to blow it up, man. Like, what are we doing here? But yeah, D'Lo returned from that knee, called himself sore, misses more than I thought. I thought he was only going to miss 1 game. Comes out there, gets full minutes, looks pretty good. Naz Reid getting the probable tag is a really good sign. he went off 2 games ago, and I would expect him to.
He was going off in this game. He had 10
Yeah.
points in 12 minutes, and then he gets hurt.
Yeah, he is just completely cooking right now. So good matchup against Dallas. Dallas's half-court defense has really slipped. I think they're 23rd in the last month. So tougher matchup for Anthony Edwards. He's actually been held in check by Dorian Finney-Smith in each of the last 2 games he's faced him. So could be a sneaky spot for D'Lo. And man, I think Naz Reid is going to be one of the better plays in the slate again. And we'll get to Mavs in a second. But yeah, big win for the Wolves. Of course, I didn't bet it.
Good. Showing growth. On the Mavs side of things, you mentioned Luka expected to play tonight. Dwight Powell questionable. Timothy Hardaway Jr. dealing with an illness. What are your expectations on the Mavericks tonight?
Yeah, Luka's got all these little bumps and bruises. He's been dealing with this quad thing, but gets upgraded. Should be good to go. Would expect pretty full minutes. He gets a tough matchup against Shea McDaniels. Actually hasn't seen this matchup at all in the last 2 seasons, whether it's because of one person not playing on either end. But yeah, so that's we should see a bunch. We saw a little bit of Kemba overlap with Luka, and then Kemba just completely smashes all the touch time. Played, just a fantastic game.
The one thing we got right on Saturday was
Kemba. That was I wish I printed some freaking ladders on that one, man.
Kemba had an 11.5 points line. He scored 32. So
he would probably have been like 40-1 for like a 30-point game or something. Would have been a nice one.
Yeah.
But I would expect him to pick up some minutes, even if THJ doesn't play. I think they would start Bullock with the double wing defense there. But we'll see. And Dwight Powell also dealing with that knee, got rolled out pretty early. Decent chance he misses. And no Maxi Kleber. And we saw Wood get a ton of minutes overtime, but it got to 43. Yeah. Really, really active. He's been stepping up in a big way offensively. So he really benefits from no Maxi Kleber. I think he has a really big ceiling night in, night out, and a matchup that I think that he could take advantage of as well.
What are your thoughts on Kemba Walker's role going forward? What do you think it looks like for the Mavericks when they're fully healthy? This was obviously a game with no Luka Doncic, with no Spencer Dinwiddie, so they needed a lot of ball handling. They leaned into him very, very hard. What are your thoughts, like long term? What does it look like for Kemba in Dallas?
Not very good. I don't think they're going to want to play him too much. He'll get the non-Luka minutes plus maybe 4 or 5 overlaps, something like that. So you're looking at like probably a ceiling of like 18, 19 minutes. I think things are going well.
Okay.
Although if THJ doesn't play, you can make it a little bit of a big argument there. THJ is not a defender either, so I think that there's past him maybe getting a little bit more if THJ is out.
Well, the thing that I'm thinking about, and I think a lot of people out there are probably thinking about, is last year they had Jalen Brunson, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Luka, and we saw like Luka and Jalen play a lot, and then Spencer Dinwiddie had this like 25-minute a night roll off the bench, and like it would seem to be somewhat similar in terms of the players' individual skill sets. The difference that you did note there, though, Tim Hardaway Jr. was not available a big part of the second half of last season after they made that Dinwiddie trade, if I'm remembering things correctly, in terms of Tim Hardaway Jr.'s injury situation. So maybe that's the key. But I also think like, an 18-minute a night role for Kemba, if they can keep him healthy that way, like that might help their team quite a bit because they've really struggled to score the ball this year.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think that's all spot on.
Okay. Let's talk through other doubtful or outs and a little bit of questionable. DeAndre Ayton is questionable for Phoenix. They're without a lot of players. Their injury report is pretty littered today, and Devin Booker got ruled out. They're also without, obviously, Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson, but Cam Payne, who's been out a little bit of late, and then Jock Landale, who they lost to concussion protocol. So losing Booker, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, Landale, if Ayton is unable to go, Landale would have been a rotation piece. Campaign, like things get pretty thin here. No Dwayne Washington as well. So what are your thoughts on what the Phoenix rotation looks like without Booker, who went nuts against the Pelicans on Saturday night for almost another 60 burger for Devin Booker?
Yeah, he just completely controlled this game. Back to back, definitely a factor. I think that's why he's not playing today. So expect, probably a Q tag tomorrow. I have my doubts on Ayton. We saw him limp off to the locker room, and then he was just walking so slowly. He hasn't really had much of a chance to play, getting ruled out early. So I would lean on the doubtful side here for him. And yeah, it's the Bismack Biyombo show. Certainly going to want to get as much minutes for him. to protect the paint against the Lakers. Good matchup against Thomas Bryant. So he would be certainly in play with the lack of depth. They'd run Dario Saric behind him. We've seen a little bit of Ish Wainwright as well, as he actually played over Dario the last game. So I think Bismack would play a ton of minutes in a matchup I'd want to attack as well.
Yeah, and they're going up against a Lakers team that we know is without Anthony Davis for a while.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the second night of a back-to-back, and their starters played a decent bit, and a couple guys got hobbled in that game. Both Austin Reeves and Lonnie Walker sort of turned their ankles and came back into the game. So the Lakers haven't filed yet, but there's a lot of potential injury risk associated with this Lakers team. And they played Thomas Bryant 33 minutes last night. Will be interesting to see how much he can play on back-to-backs as well, because this is a guy who has been coming off of a couple seasons without really big minutes. This is a situation that I think we're going to get a very full injury report later for the Lakers would be my expectation.
Yeah, we might get that in 10 minutes. LeBron as well. He hasn't played in a back-to-back in like a month. We saw him miss that back-to-back from an ankle tweak. I think he's probably playing, but there's definitely a chance.
I think the Booker out stuff makes it more likely that LeBron tries to play. They're going to try to get every win they can. They need to. So,
but Reeves said he's hopeful to play today, so expecting him to be out there. Unclear on. We saw Patrick Beverley get the midday doubtful tag for a calf. That's usually a thing that costs multiple games, so I think he's a little bit unlikely. But as you said, we'll probably have 3, 4, 5 guys on top of Anthony Davis getting out. Yeah, Thomas Bryant's just going to cook, man. Like, he's in such a huge spot here.
The other thing that I'd note is for the Lakers rotation, they were without Pat Bev last night, obviously, but it does look like Max Christie has started to make more of an impression in terms of getting into that lineup and providing some shooting and spacing on the floor. Troy Brown Jr.'s minutes have come down quite a bit, but it's something to watch that Max Christie seems to be making an impression there. And we had a Reeves under last night, so I was almost on more and more tilt with the guy shooting 80% from the field and 100% from three to almost cook us. Thank God he did not. But man, the shooting against the unders of late has been very hot. Kuzma last night was shooting the ball real well. Very, very challenging. Okay, more doubtful outs. Kelly Olynyk was ruled out for the Jazz. And I think this is kind of an interesting situation to talk through just because positionally, I think a lot of people think of Kelly Olynyk as a center, but I don't think the Jazz do. I think the Jazz think of Kelly Olynyk as a power forward. And so I think I'm very interested to see what lineup they choose to start with tonight, because the matchup is also against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are very big. And so normally they don't play a lot of Walker Kessler and Jared Vanderbilt together. I could see for this matchup it being sort of the exception to the rule. But what are your thoughts on how the Jazz replace Kelly Olynyk tonight?
I think it's Malik Beasley. As you mentioned, there's only 1 minute of overlap with Walker Kessler and Vanderbilt. Quite obviously, you've got major spacing concerns there to put them on the court together, and they're both kind of rim protecty. So I think that they explore that lineup a little bit, but it's certainly not. That's the Walker Kessler Vanderbilt combo. But I feel pretty confident it's going to be Malik Beasley getting the start. So it'll be Conley, Clarkson, Malik at the 3. Laurie playing the 4, and then Vanderbilt being your 5-man. So, but yeah, a little bit more, maybe the wingmans open up for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He's been playing ahead of THT right now. And then, not too much else.
Yeah, I think the starting lineup will be pretty telling in terms of the back end of the rotation. If you see the 2 bigs, Vanderbilt and Kessler, starting together, it means Azubuike is probably in the rotation as a backup center. And if you see them starting the Beasley combination, it probably bodes better for someone like Talen Horton-Tucker getting into the rotation at the back end. I think Rudy Gay seems to have jumped above Simone Fontecchio, which was a little bit surprising last game. Would expect them both to be available and in the rotation tonight in the absence of Kelly Olynyk. Okay. Keeping it moving to Lamar Stevens and the Cavs on the other side. He is unlikely to go. We have seen Isaac Okoro slide into that starting spot with Karis LeVert kept off the bench. Is that your expectation for that to hold once again tonight?
Yeah, I think so. There was a quote from Bickerstaff after the game saying he put LeVert, quote, in a bad spot. But we saw huge minutes, 38, didn't really play all that well. So different matchup though, right? I think that they might start him here just because you're not going against kind of a different team. But Yeah, I think they'll probably go that way again. They seem to like, their main on-ball defender to kind of help their defensive structure.
All right, on to the Bucks, where Chris Middleton is ruled out once again. They played last game without Giannis and Chris, and Drew carried the Bucks to fairly straightforward, easy win. They're in New Orleans tonight. Drew Holiday revenge potential. No Chris Middleton. What are your thoughts on how? I mean, we've seen the Bucks play a lot without Chris Middleton this year, so shouldn't be any big surprise. The one thing that I was surprised by last game with no Giannis and no Middleton was Jordan Nwora wasn't even in the rotation. I mean, he just got in for blowout at the very end, which was surprising to me. Any notes though that you have here for the Bucks?
No, I think you kind of nailed it. We've seen their starting lineup be Drew, Javon Carter, Grayson, Giannis, Brook. Fun matchup against the Pelicans. Pelicans defense has been very good. The Bucks have actually slipped on defense there. Last month they're only 12th in half court D, so not nearly as effective as they were earlier in the season. But Drew also, got pretty full minutes, played pretty well. We talked about this illness thing lingering, didn't really seem to affect Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
You see 27 minutes. He actually came in the fourth quarter when it was kind of on the verge of a blowout, and then he got subbed out for the final 4 minutes for garbage time. So he would have got to 31. So got pretty full minutes. Would expect that to be the case again. And matchup's really tricky, as I think they're going to put Herb on Drew. And I think this, they might throw like Trey Murphy or even Zion on. It's Giannis is my cover boy for matchups today. I think Giannis could just really, really smash.
On the other side of this, no Larry Nance, which I think probably plays a big role into your feelings on Giannis tonight. He's listed as doubtful, so we're assuming that he's unable to go. How does that shake up the Pelicans rotation?
Yeah, the headline obviously is Valanciunas. It's not really Valanciunas, not earning minutes. It's more of like Larry Nance just deserves to play more,
right?
Because how well he's been playing. So Valanciunas will have a really, really nice minutes floor. We haven't seen too much of the Zion 5 stuff, and I think not having Brandon Ingram makes it a little less likely just because you have fewer tools to turn to those smaller lineups. So I think we may see a little bit of Billy Hernangomez, but yeah, the headline would obviously be just like, we actually like Valanciunas today.
Yeah, we took in over there. Obviously, tough matchup with the Bucks interior defense for both Zion, for both Valanciunas. Brook Lopez, an incredible rim protector. This is your night, Gallagher, for your Brook Lopez blocks. You're going to get a lot of shot opportunities because the Pels take a bunch of them at the rim. So it'll be fun to see if Brook can do what he's been doing all season, staying out of foul trouble and swatting shots at the rim. Teams that have not followed, as we alluded to, the Lakers, we expect there to be news there. And then the Hornets, where we expect there to be news as well. Gordon Hayward on a back-to-back. Will he be available? And also Terry Rozier got dinged up last night. I believe did not return to that game. So both of those players for a pretty thin Hornets team, they're going into Sacramento tonight, where the Kings have been very, very good at home, returning from a road trip. What are your thoughts on what are your expectations for these reports that we could be getting any minute now?
Yep. I think Rozier is going to miss. You mentioned did not return. So we saw Kelly Oubre start the second half. Would expect that to happen again. Hayward, little tricky. We've seen pretty full minutes from him, and picked up minutes quite a bit in his return. Got really longer stints in the second half. So I think they feel comfortable playing him good minutes there. But definitely something to watch. We could get that in 2 minutes, as you said.
Yeah. All right. That'll do it for today's edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. As always, please support the people who support us. This show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have daily NBA snake drafts for money running in addition to many formats of NFL contests, still running for huge prizes, including those playoff contests I think are so much fun. If you're playing NBA Pick'em, in-season subscribers can use our tools to compare ETR projections to their Pick'em games. If you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use promo code ETR for a matching deposit bonus up to $100. That's promo code ETR at underdogfantasy.com. If you are interested in playing those fantasy games, I highly recommend downloading the podcast Establish the Edge by Mike Leone and Justin Herzig, talking about how to attack those games. Came out, I believe, either today or over the weekend. But Justin and Mike, two really sharp minds, talking through a very unique contest that I think you really have to understand before you dive in and play. But that's what creates edge, and that's one that can be a lot of fun. Also, if you are interested in finding out more information on the DFS slate tonight, like OS asking, can you all rank value centers? We will, but behind the paywall at 5 o'clock Eastern time today with myself and Gary Hartman with another edition of Establish the Show. We'd love to see you in the chat, hanging out with us. So make sure that you've got your subscription to our in-season DFS content over at establishroom.com. You can also check out weekly, monthly packages on that side or weekly packages on the prop side. As always, if you're interested in the prop stuff, we highly, highly recommend reading the FAQ because it is a unique subscription to get into, and we want to make sure people are prepared for what they're getting into. All right, if you are uninterested in giving us your hard-earned dollars to subscribe, we would at least appreciate your hard-earned clicks. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel, get notifications whenever we go live. You can also smash that like button and help circulate in the algorithm. As we always say, feed the algorithm. We can help feed our families. We'll keep feeding you the free content. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Establish Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis show. We will see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern. Take care, everybody. Nom, 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 nom.